resetting with this and the readathon. It was so needed. It was so... Hello my loves and thank you for joining me. It's Kirsten and today we are doing February's reading wrap up. Now I'm going to do this the same way I did it in January. We're going to start off with any readathons I took part in, then we'll go into the statistics, and then we'll get into all the actual books that I read and what I thought of them. So to start off with the reading challenge, we'll start off with Rainie's year-long reading challenge, which is a challenge all about continuing series, finishing series, and this is a bingo board. I made good progress with this. I read 3 books for this. Started off with A Treacherous Curse by Dennett Raybon. This is the 3rd book in the Veronica Speedwell series, and I read this one for a series influenced by, because so many people were shouting at me to start reading this series, and I'm finally continuing. It took a little while, but we get there. Hopefully I can read more of it this year, but at least reading this 3rd book meant I was continuing, ticked off a box on the bingo board. Then I read Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales, which is book 3, and I used this for a 5-star series. This is a series that I have just loved every single book in the series. Like, I genuinely love it. This is the last book in the trilogy and so worked really well for that 5-star spot. And then finally I finished this Chunky Tome, and this one worked for series catch up because this is the 2nd book in the series and there is no 3rd book out currently, and I don't think there is going to be for a little while, so I am officially caught up on this series. This is Master Artificer by Justine Cool. I spoke about it a lot throughout the month of February, but I did enjoy reading this one and I'm so pleased I got this chunky book off my TBR. So that's that, which I'm really pleased with. So that leaves us with 5 so far, and we already have a bingo, although I am trying to black out the board, so hopefully we can continue on with this momentum, so I'm really happy with that. And then the 2nd readathon I was taking part in was a month-long readathon, which was again hosted by Rainie, and that is Get a Clue. So I was one of the co-hosts, my team was Miss Peacock, and it was really fun. We had to try and solve the mystery. It's a game based on the board game Clue, or if you're in the UK, Cluedo, and so I made myself a little list of where every time we completed a room you would get like a little clue. If you came first in the room you got an extra clue, you got to ask people questions and stuff, and so I was keeping track of this throughout the month. It was really fun to do. Yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was so inventive, so interesting. It was brilliant. That was really fun to do. So those are the readathons. Now let's get into the stats for the month. So I have 2 spreads of stats, so let's just go through them, shall we? So the books read for the month is 11. This is kind of where I want to be for reading books. I have included a book that I haven't fully finished, but I have read 70% of it in the month of February. Books hauled, so books that I either purchased or were gifted to me, that's 6. That's pretty good for me. I'm quite happy with that number. Translated, technically 1, but it was a DNF, and I don't normally count DNFs in my totals for this because books read, like, I don't count my DNFs in there and things like that, and like the formatting and all the rest of it apart from the DNFs bit. So technically I read 0 translated books, but I did attempt to start one, it's just it was a DNF. So then we've got the format, which I read 6 physical books and 5 were ebooks. It was a very ebook heavy month, but that worked out because the first week of Get a Clue I was trying to be a senior detective and keeping up with the prompts and how quickly they would drop. I couldn't keep up, but I did read quite a lot as ebooks because of that. So DNFs 3, same as last month, and then rereads, we had 1 reread. Honestly, not too bad overall. I'm quite pleased with that. And then we get into our genre statistics. Now the way I do this is if there is a crossover genre, so for instance I have cozy, which is a subgenre. If it's a cozy fantasy, it will get 1 in cozy and 1 in fantasy, etc. If we have like a fantasy mystery, you'd get 1 in mystery, 1 in fantasy. So the numbers are a little bit skewed differently to how many books I've read, but it's just because of how the genres fit. Cozy books was 6, so we're still hitting that 50% mark of my reading, which is what I want my cozy books to be and what it should be, considering I do videos like the cozy new releases and things. It's something I really enjoy. So yeah, I'm very happy with that. Fantasy books is 3, quite a bit lower than last month, but it made sense because of Get a Clue. Sci-fi is 1, which is exactly the same as last month. Horror is 2, and then mystery is 6, which is the biggest increase, but again that made sense because I did mainly want to read mystery books for Get a Clue, because again originally I was going to be a senior detective, and as a senior detective you get bonus points for reading a mystery book. I went down to senior, but I still wanted to keep up with reading my mystery books, so that is what I did. And then thriller, romance, classic, other, all were 0. Very heavy mystery reading month, which is fine because then in March I think I've got one mystery book I need to read, and then the rest of it isn't mystery, so I'm kind of giving myself a nice little break from that. So those are all the statistics. It has been fun keeping track of those. I'm still keeping on top of it, which I'm pretty impressed with. Then we're going to go through a few different things. So I always mention a couple of books from the month prior that I read, because the video for it comes out the month after, which is my cozy new releases. So in January I did DNF a book that was The Baby Dragon Cafe. That was for the cozy new releases video. This had a really good concept. It's kind of like the Dream Harbour series, but make it more fantasy based where you've got dragons. Unfortunately for me, it was just the dialogue between characters that came across really juvenile when they're meant to be adults that I didn't like. The concept of it all, honestly, the rest of it was great. It's just I can't get past juvenile dialogue, which is a shame, but I do think some people will enjoy this one, so yeah, it's just unfortunate. Then a book that I finished in January is Watermoon. I enjoyed this book. I thought it was very much a Studio Ghibli film made into a book. It was very cozy, whimsical, very magical. I really enjoyed the world building of this book. The plot, a little bit slow and repetitive, but the world building was so well done. It was so imaginative, which is a word I use a lot in that video, but it really was. So I really enjoyed it for that. And then the second ebook I read for that video, but does actually count as part of February statistics because I read it at the very start of February, is Stormborn Vine, which is a book that the first half of the book I had such high hopes for. It had so many things that I normally love in a book, but the ending kind of let it down. It was a bit too rushed. It didn't have time to wrap up the 3 different plot lines that were going on, and so some things got left. So I think it could have been done really well. It was just a little bit too rushed. I think we needed just an extra like 50 to 100 pages to really round everything out, but I did really like the concept because it has, again, a lot of things I really like in a book, which I said all of this in that video, so I'm not going to go too in depth, but it will be linked below if you're interested. Then for the month of February I've got 3 ebooks I can't talk to you about. I can't talk to you about them. 2 of them I can't talk about because they are for Battle of the Booktuber, which is coming to you in July. 1 is for the cozy new releases video, which is coming to you in March. It's been decent, I'm not gonna lie. Also, we have 1 of the DNFs for February is in the cozy new releases video. Unfortunately, that was also an ebook, but I DNF'd that one. And then I have 1 physical book I can't talk to you about because, again, that's for Battle of the Booktuber. I made really good progress with Battle of the Booktuber books. I have to read 10 books. I've now read 5. So that's been really good, but unfortunately I can't talk to you about those. You'll have to wait till July. But now let's get into all the books I can talk to you about, and we're going to start off with the 2 other DNFs that I had for the month of February. The first DNF being My Favourite by Sarah Jolene Fardell. This is translated from French by Holly James. Now, Sarah is a Swiss author. She's in the French Swiss speaking part, hence why it's translated from French. I couldn't read this one, so I got 22 pages in, and this was very triggering for me, which is weird because I'm not normally triggered by books. There is one thing that I don't like in books, which is violence towards animals, especially when it's just unnecessary. I really hate it in books, and I don't like that. That wasn't anything to do with that in this book, so I was not expecting to be triggered. Instead, it is a book about this young girl who is dealing with domestic violence. It's really hard because nobody is helping her, nobody is interested, and I knew this was going to be a really hard-hitting book and quite a difficult topic, but I didn't think I'd be as triggered as I was. But there was one scene in particular that I had to put the book down. I was like, I can't do this. I genuinely cannot deal with this. I'm not in the right mental space. I don't think I'm ever going to want to pick this one up. It was far too triggering, and it's not anything I ever want to think about. So yeah, that was a no. It then also caused a really big mood slump for me because I then felt very kind of sensitive and just needing things that were just going to be really comforting and reassuring, but it just put me in a weird mood. So trying to do that alongside Get a Clue and being a senior detective, it didn't work. So for the first 2 weeks of February, I really struggled in my reading. I still read a good amount, but I struggled with it. The next DNF is as a result of all of that, which is The Manor House Governess by C.A. Castle. This is a book that I got, how far did I get into this? I got up to page 89 and I ended up putting this one down because of the mood I was in, because I realised the reason why I'm trying to read this book is, one, to fit a prompt for Get a Clue, which is the only reason why I picked this book up, which is not a good reason to pick up a book for me, and two, my mood wasn't there. I was needing books that were really, really comforting with characters and that I already know, and this wasn't that for me. This was a new book, new characters, and a couple of things that I kind of struggled with a little bit. So this one, we're following Bronte Ellis, kind of struggling with his identity. He refers to himself as a he, but he likes to dress in more feminine clothing and can't really decide if he should be referred to as a woman or not. Like, he's can't decide. At the minute, he hadn't decided. Where I got up to, he was still like, no, you refer to me as a boy. And he becomes a governess. It's all inspired by Jane Eyre and also Jane Austen romance. I was expecting this to be a bit more like historical set. Instead it's not, but you would get random drops of modern things, like random talks about Instagram or Reels or, you know, like Google Maps and things like this, and it would take me out of the story because the way they spoke to one another was very reminiscent of a historical set book, different things, so it was a little bit jarring in that. I think the actual concept of this book is lovely and I do want to get back to it at some point. It's just, it wasn't in the mood for it right then. I couldn't concentrate on it, so yeah, unfortunately no. But if you are after a queer reimagining of Jane Eyre crossed with Jane Austen's work, give it a try. So yeah, so those are the DNF. Now let's get into everything else. I think, what do I want to start with? Do we just do the mystery books? Yeah, why not? Okay, so the one reread of the month was A Curious Beginning by Dana Raybon, the first book in the Veronica Speedwell series, and as we know, I also read the third. Kind of weird that I went 1 and 3, but it's what worked for the prompts. So I did a reread of the first book, and then the next prompt that came up worked for the third book, not the second book, which was absolutely fine because I really loved this first book. It was absolutely fun, wonderful, but I remembered quite a bit of the second book, so I was quite happy to skip it to then go into the third book. These are just fun. These are really cozy mysteries. We're following Veronica Speedwell, who is a lepidoporist, and she, in the first book, gets kind of caught up in this series of events that ends her in London with a guy called Stoker, and they are kind of caught up in a murder mystery, which sets off a chain of events because then every single book they get caught up in a mystery of some form, normally ending in murder. It's good. It's really fun. I really enjoy the series. I love the banter between Veronica and Stoker. I think it is really well done. This third book wasn't as strong in terms of the mystery plotline, but it was really, really needed for Stoker's development. So I was really pleased with that, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where the fourth book goes. There are 9 books out in this series, and I just have such a fun time with it. These are the UK covers of it, and then the rest of the books never got a UK cover, so the rest of the series is not going to match. But I really love these so much that I didn't mind. But I will eventually get all the rest of the books in this series and continue on with it. Like, I have so much fun with it. This is definitely something that I will go to if I need something that is just a little bit comforting, cozy and fun. These are the books, and this is what I read straight after DNFing my favourite, and it was very, very needed. Okay, talking of more comforting mysteries, I did read A Pocketful of Rye by Agatha Christie. This is another Miss Marple book, and I had a lot of fun with this. I was trying to solve it. It was a lot of fun. I didn't solve it, no surprises there. My track record is atrocious for it, but this was just so much fun. I really like Miss Marple books. I find them very cozy and comforting. There is just something about them that just really, really works for me. I actually don't mind that Miss Marple is not a massively active part in these mysteries. Like, she is there. In this one, she ended up coming in a bit earlier than some of the other books I've read, where she just has conversations. She just uses the fact that she is an elderly, lovable person who can chat to people, and people will tell her things, and it is just really, really nice. I really enjoyed it. Really happy with this. It got me back into reading Agatha Christie novels because for the longest time I have been reading short story collections. So last year I read a lot of the short story collections. This one is one I finished in February. I was reading this across December and January. I've included it in February statistics as that's when I finished it. But this is the Midwinter Murder Collection. This is a collection of short stories. Now, last year I read the summer and autumn, started this one. I also read a Christmas short story collection. So I read a lot of Agatha Christie, but it was short stories. So it was really nice to get back into reading an actual novel and remembering how much I just really, really enjoy these. So that was really good, and those are the 2 other books. I had an Agatha Christie reading week where I read this one and finished out this collection, and it was so much fun. The collection, what I like about it is that you don't have just Miss Marple, you also get Hercule Poirot, Tommy and Tuppence, Mr. Quinn, like there's a lot. It is really fun. I really enjoyed it. There has been a couple crossovers that I've had in other things, but like the titles changed slightly, things like it doesn't bother me too much. Really, really pleased that I read all of these. Like, this was great. It's got me back into my Agatha Christie fix. Like, I had a good fun with that. Then we have a mystery book that I didn't get on with as much, and that's The Cabaret Macabre by Tom Mead. This is the 3rd book in a series, but you can read them out of order. That's not a problem. What I found difficult about this book is it being one where there was a lot of characters, like there was a lot of perspective jumps. The chapters were super short, which isn't normally a problem, except within the chapter you have a sub-chapter, and that sub-chapter you're following different people, you also get time jumps and things, so there's a lot of things where you're jumping around, and I prefer a narrative that flows a bit better rather than jumping from point to point. So I kind of struggled keeping on track with what was going on, all the different perspectives. Now, part of that, I read this when I was very tired. I was reading it when I was on my early shifts, so this probably wasn't the best time to read a book that requires a bit more concentration. And I also should have been annotating and keeping track of the different characters and things, and I think that would have improved my enjoyment of this. So I don't think this is a problem with the book. I know so many people really love this book. I know Leandra really likes it, Danny enjoys this series, Jennifer enjoys it. I'll have all 3 of them linked below, all amazing booktubers. So, you know, I do recommend this. It's just, I think I want to try the 1st book, give this author another try, and just see, is it just the writing style that I don't gel with, or was it the fact that I was just too tired and I wasn't actively participating in the mystery that lessened my enjoyment of this? Because I feel like it could definitely be that, because it was intriguing. There was a lot going on. There were lots of impossible mysteries. Now, this is the book with the most murders in it, so I think the 1st book I might get on with a little bit easier, and once I'm used to the writing style, then do a reread of this maybe at some point. We'll see. I don't know. I'm not sure. I just don't know whether it was a mixture of the mood, because this was the 2nd week and I was still struggling a little bit from the mood, from all the triggering content in combination with being tired and all of the other things. So I don't think this is anything wrong, like the book's fault. It could be that I try another book and I actually still struggle with how many different perspectives and the jumping around and stuff, or it could be that it was just all the factors, all the things that got together that just really struggled. I struggled with it. So we'll see. What did happen is I had the Relax and Readathon, which I forgot to mention at the start of this actually, but it was like, so my Relax and Readathon is a 24-hour readathon that I host bi-monthly, and it's all about self-care. So just take one day for yourself to relax. Yes, read some book, but even if you decide not to read, that's absolutely fine. You're taking a day for yourself. You're already winning. The book I read for it is Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales by Heather Fawcett, and this was the reset I needed. I needed this day. It was a mixture of reading this book but also just taking a self-care day, and I needed a day for me where all I did was all of my favourite things. I just relaxed. I didn't do any YouTube work. I didn't do anything else. I read a book that I know I was going to love, just chilled. I did some baking. It was a really nice day. It was really needed, and I felt so revitalised that once I had finished that day and finished this book, my reading mood just went up. I was so much happier. It was that following week I read the Agatha Christie books, and again I was in such a happier mood. Prior to this, I think reading Cabaret Macabre in the mood that I was in was the wrong move, but resetting with this and the readathon, it was so needed. It was so needed. So this one is the 3rd and final book in the Emily Wilde series, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it wrapped up the series very well. It did a lot of callbacks to the 1st and 2nd book and tied up any loose strings. It does start straight off from the 2nd book, so if it's been a little while since you've read that 2nd book, it might be worth doing a bit of a reread. I kind of wished I had done that, but I remembered enough of it as we were going on, things that would remind me of that 2nd book, that I was like, okay, yes, I remember. But where the 1st and 2nd book, you didn't need, like, they took place after one another, but not like as directly plot heavy straight away. Between the second and third book, like, they happen directly after one another. It's quite fast paced, quite plot forward in this one, but it wraps up really well. The whole series was done really, really well. This is a series ending that I can go, genuinely, I don't have any complaints. There is not anything about this book that I'm like, oh, we should have explored this more, we should have wrapped up this better. Like, no, genuinely, I think it was done really, really well. Could I happily read more from this world? Yes. Definitely, I could happily read anything else Heather Fawcett puts out in this world, whether it's little novellas, whether it's just seeing what they're up to. Like, 100% I could easily do that. I really love these characters. I love everything about this, which if you don't know what this series is about, I'd be surprised because I talk about it a lot. In the first book, we are following Emily Wilde, and Emily Wilde is creating this encyclopedia of fairies, and she is keeping a journal while she does so, and that is what we're reading. These books are Emily's journals. She has her rival professor with her who decided to just invite himself along this trip, which she was not happy with, called Wendell Bumblebee, and then sparks off a series of adventures, and it's just so much fun. I really, really enjoy this book. I really enjoy Emily as a character. I really enjoy the journal entry format of it all. It's just so well done. I absolutely love it. And then the final book I read for the month of February is Master Artificer by Justin Call. This is the second book in the series, and this took me a long time to read because I started reading this a little bit at the start of the month. So like for 3 weeks I would kind of dip in and read like little bits here and there. It worked. It was also helpful in getting me out of that mood because, again, this is characters that I know, classic epic fantasy. It feels very comforting to me because I used to be such a massive fantasy reader. Like, a big portion of my reading before YouTube was just classic epic fantasy. Like, that's what it was. I loved epic fantasy. So having this, it felt comforting to me because of that connection. This is not a comforting book by any means, but it felt comforting because, again, I've always read more fantasy leaning books, and it's only really since started in YouTube where I've branched out a lot more. But I really enjoyed this. I thought it was really good. We are following different perspectives. So in the first book you just follow a Nev. In this book you get multiple different perspectives, which I think was really needed. There was definitely a slow point in the middle of this book. The other perspectives help carry you through that. It gets very dark, very gritty, very gruesome. There are some scenes that I will never unsee that. I mean, okay, it was in my head, but I am a visual reader, so when I'm reading, I picture what I'm reading, so it's almost like a movie for me. I'm never getting those scenes out of my head. Ever. Like, it was gruesome, but it was also really good. Like, I don't know, I don't know what that says about me. I really don't. This was good. I really enjoyed it. If you are looking for just a classic fantasy, I would say the first book feels very classic fantasy. This book feels like it's getting more grimdark fantasy. The third book is not out yet, and we have been waiting a long while for that one, but that's fine. You know what? Like I said in the weekly reading vlog, everybody is human. We all have things that happen in our lives, and if it delays things, it delays things. I am really pleased that I read this. This has been sitting on my TBR for ages. I'm really, really happy with this. I thought it was well done. I haven't gone into depth about what it's about because I have done that in every single reading vlog for February, and I am so sorry for those of you that watch every single video because gosh, you must be fed up of hearing it. But yeah, so I'm not going to go back into it, but this was very good. I'm very pleased I read it. I'm pleased that I got this chunky book off my TBR, and honestly it was nice to read a chunky book and to really get into it because a lot of the books that I've been averaging now is probably more closer to about 300 pages, whereas again, I used to be a massive chunky reader person. Like, the bigger the book, the better. It's been nice to kind of get back into that as well and read a chunky book. So yeah, that's it. Those are all the readings for this month. You'll have to let me know, have you read any of these? Did you take part in Get a Clue? What was your favourite read of the month? Let me know all of the things in the comments below. And thank you so much for watching, and all of my Patreons, like, genuinely, for everyone that supports me, whether you are somebody that silently watches, whether you comment, whether you support me on Patreon, in which case you get an extra thank you. Genuinely, it does make the world of difference, so thank you so much. I think if you've made it this far, it's been primarily a mystery reader month, so we definitely need to put the magnifying glass emoji in the comments below if you've made it this far or just don't have anything to say. And again, thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, then please do consider giving it that thumbs up, subscribing and commenting. Those 3 things really help this channel out. My social media links, my Discord, my Patreon, everyone I've mentioned, everything is linked below for you, and I will of course catch you in the very next video.